Thanks for joining me today. This is Laura Lynn with Keep Inking Up. I'm an independent demonstrator for Stampin' Up in San Antonio, Texas. And today I want to share a couple of tips using the Sweet Strawberry Bundle. This includes the photopolymer stamp set and the coordinating punch that goes with it. Now you can purchase these items separately, but when you purchase them as a bundle, you do save 10%. And I'm all about saving, so I like to buy them as bundles when they're offered as bundles. And this bundle is offered in the current January to June 2021 mini catalog. Once this catalog is finished in June, this will no longer be offered as a bundle. So if you do want to get this bundle, I do recommend that you get it while the current catalog is going on. But I did want to give a couple of tips on how to use this punch and use paper most efficiently. Now this is a photopolymer stamp set, so my first tip is to use, let me put this out of the way, is to use the deluxe foam mat. This is an accessory for our stamparatus, but it has the foam on the back, which gives it a good cushion for whenever you're using photopolymer stamp sets. So I always like to use this deluxe foam mat whenever I am using photopolymer images. So my main tip is efficient use of paper for this punch. So what I do is I look at the images and I get out scraps of paper that will work best for the image that I want to punch out. So I have several different thicknesses of strips of paper here. This is 1.5 inches, I believe. Yes, this is 1.5 inches, and this one fits perfectly for the strawberry image. Then I have another piece that is 1.25 inches, and this works well for the stem image that's right there. And then I have another piece that is 1 inch wide, and that is for the small flower. And hopefully you'll see as we do the stamping and the punching of what I mean by efficient use of paper. So my biggest tip for using any punch that has multiple images is to use strips of paper rather than whole sheets of paper. And I think that you'll see what I mean as we go along. So let's pull out the 1.5 inch piece of Whisper White cardstock. I'm going to stamp the strawberry. The strawberry has 2 images. It has an outline image and a solid image. You can see that mine are stained a little bit because I've used them obviously with some red inks, and red inks do stain your photopolymer stamps. Don't worry, having a stained stamp does not mean it is defective or that it won't work. I can still, as long as I keep it clean, I can still stamp these in like a yellow color and it'll be just fine. But one thing that I do like to do whenever I will know that I'm going to be stamping with red ink is I like to ink up my images first with Versamark. And this just kind of gives a little coating of clear ink on the stamp to try to minimize the stain. It won't keep it from staining, but it will minimize the stain. And then I'm going to use Poppy Parade ink for my strawberry. Oh, one other thing that I wanted to mention is when you look at your punch, make note of how your image is on the punch. So in this example, the strawberry, the smaller tip is toward the top. So on my paper, what I want to do is I want to stamp my image so that the pointed part of the strawberry goes toward the top of my paper. I'm going to do the same thing with the solid image of this strawberry. I will ink up in the Versamark just to give a clear coating of ink on there, and then I will again ink that up in my Poppy Parade and stamp that down onto my strawberry. And I love how in this stamp set you see that mottled watercolor look on there. Isn't that nice? Looks a lovely strawberry. Now you could have done the strawberry outline in black if you wanted it to be a little more pronounced, especially if you wanted the seeds to show up more, but I kind of like the color on color look for the strawberry. Now I can take my punch and I'm going to slide this in, line it up, and you can see, oops, I'll punch out my strawberry, and you can see how I just punched out those little pieces of paper, and I won't be able to use these. These are just little scraps that I'm not going to be able to use, but you can see that I efficiently used this piece of paper. And then next I could go down and stamp. I could still fit more strawberries on this particular strip, but I just need 1 strawberry for the card that I'm going to be making today. So next I'm going to bring in my 1.25 inch piece, and this is for my little stem pieces. And I'm going to stamp those in Granny Apple Green. So again, I'm going to open up my ink pad. I'm going to look at my stamp, and I see that my stem piece goes in this direction. So I want to stamp, and I'm actually going to stamp on this end of the paper. Last time I stamped on the right-hand side because I was going to slide it. Well, actually, yeah. I did on the right-hand side so I could slide it in that way. This time, for efficient use, I want to bring in my paper this direction so I can stamp next to the end. So I'm going to stamp on this side of the paper. And again, I want to make sure that I'm stamping this lined up this way. Don't have to be exact, but approximately in that direction. Then I will ink up the solid part, the watercolor image. And excuse my head, I'm going to try to get on top of here and see if I can get this lined up. It's not exactly, but it's really good. I'll slide that into my punch. Line it up and punch that out. And you can see again, it's a very efficient use of that strip, and I can keep going over and over. Now, if I could stamp a whole bunch of those images, I just keep moving this paper over and over and over again. And I'll show you that in the next example, because next we're going to use the inch strip, and we're going to get these stamps a little bit out of the way. We're going to stamp my little flower, my little strawberry blossom. So I have the solid watercolor image. There is an outline image, but I'm just going to use the solid image for this. Open up my Daffodil Delight ink. And again, I need to look at I'm going to start pulling in on this side. So I'm going to start inking on this side of the paper. And it looks like my flower is kind of on an angle like that. So I'm going to stamp 1, 2, and 3 flowers. So now I can I'm going to go ahead and close up this ink before I make a big mess. I want to make sure I don't do that. I'm going to slide this in and line up my flower. And oops, punch out 1 blossom. I'm going to slide it over. Punch out my 2nd blossom, and then finally my 3rd. Oops, paper is stuck in there. I'll punch out my 3rd flower. And you can see again efficient use of the paper, because I just keep moving it over and I can still use this paper for something else. Okay, now I've got bunches of little scraps here and there. My one last bit of stamping, I have a piece of 1/2 inch wide strip of Whisper White cardstock, and I'm just going to stamp my sentiment using the Granny Apple Green. And I'm using the Thank You sentiment. So I'll stamp that right here on my strip. That looks a little bit high. Maybe I can try it again on the other side. Get it not quite so high. There, I think that looks better. And I'm going to punch the end of this with a different punch. I'm going to use the Lovely Labels Pick-a-Punch. You have 2 choices. You have the really fancy end or the little more squared off end. Let's see, I think I'm going to use this little fancy end. So I'm going to slide this paper in here all the way to the end. I'm going to turn it over and make sure it looks like it's centered as best as it can, and give that a punch. And that ends a cute little end on there. Okay, so now I'm ready to go ahead and put a card together. I've done ahead of time, I've made a card base. This is out of Poppy Parade ink, so it goes well with my Poppy Parade strawberry. And I have added a piece of, so this card base is 5.5 by 8.5, and it's folded in half at 4 1/4. And then I've added another layer of a Happy Parade that has been embossed using the hammered metal 3D embossing folder. I thought this kind of went well with the strawberry seeds. So this layer is 4 by 5 1/4, and I've just adhered that on there with some mono liquid glue. I had done that ahead of time to save a little bit of time. And I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to rip this off just right about there because my sentiment will go on like that. And I need to attach my stem to my strawberry. So for that, I'm going to use some glue dots. I hope I don't run out of glue dots today. Let's see, we'll add a glue dot to the back side of my stem and add that to the top of my strawberry. And then I'm going to add that to my sentiment. So I think what I'm going to do is add the glue dot to the sentiment piece. And I'll go ahead and add 2 just to make sure that's good and stuck on there. And I'm just going to put that kind of on an angle like that. So there's my sentiment that's going to go across the front of my card. And to add that to my card, I'm going to use dimensionals if I can find them. Here they are. So I've got the little mini dimensionals. It's just what I happen to bring over today. So with these mini dimensionals, I like to use the piercing end of my Take Your Pick tool because these are so small. So I'm going to pick them up and add several along here to adhere this group of sentiment and strawberry to my card base. I think that's probably enough. So I'll take the backings off of those. And then I'll stick that on my card toward the bottom third. Try to get it somewhat straight. That looks pretty good. Maybe a little bit crooked, but that's okay. And then for my flowers, I wanted to do a little bit of work to them. I'm going to actually turn my deluxe foam mat over. And I'm going to stick these on the foam mat, and I'm going to use the cover tip from the putty part of the Take Your Pick tool, and I'm just going to press into the center of these flowers. And hopefully you can see that that just gives them a little bit of cupping, so it gives them a little bit of dimension before we add them onto our card. And I'll do that with some more glue dots. So I'm going to turn these over, and I'll pick up a glue dot with my Take Your Pick tool, stick it on the back of the flower, and I'll add one up here. And I'll add, if I can pick it up, I'll add another one over, add another one right there. All jumpy flowers today. And then I'll pick up my third one, and I guess I'll put it down right here. So these flowers have a little bit of dimension on them. I wanted to add a little bit more, so I brought in my pearls. Now I could have colored these pearls in if I wanted to, but I didn't. But you certainly could if you wanted. And I'm going to use the putty end of the Take Your Pick tool, and I'm going to stick these pearls into the center of these flowers just to add a little bit of embellishment on the card. And that card is complete. So isn't that fun? Now I do have another card that's very similar. This one I used a different sentiment, still from the same stamp set, and then I used the other punch on that Pick-a-Punch. On the card that I made for you today, I used this more fancy end, and then I used the more squared end on this one. I also used a different embossing folder in the background. This is the Brick and Mortar 3D embossing folder that I used on the back of this one. And then I added rhinestones instead of pearls on the center of the flowers. One other difference between the two of these is on the fill-in part of the strawberry. On this particular one, I stamped off the ink so that it's a little bit lighter. And on this one, I did full strength. So this one, you see the seeds and the outline a little bit more intensely. So let me know what you think. Which card do you like better? There's a little bit of differences in either one, and actually just tell me which parts that you like from either card. They're the same, but a little bit different. So thank you so much for watching today. I hope you learned a little bit on a couple of tips on how to use this punch most efficiently with paper. And this, of course, coordinates with the Sweet Strawberry stamp set from the January to June 2021 mini catalog. So thank you again so much for joining me today, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.